everybody, it's Alan Brochstein coming to you from Houston, Texas to talk about cannabis stocks. First, let me wish all of you who celebrate or don't celebrate a very happy Jewish New Year. Lashana Tova. So I work for myself at 420 Investor, which is for people who want to learn more about cannabis stocks. And I also run New Cannabis Ventures. Let me start with a review of this week. There were two pieces of news that came out, maybe three. I'll mention the third one. I didn't write it in the summary. The first was Michigan released their cannabis sales for August. Remember, Illinois was last week, Michigan this week. And they were up 33% from a year ago, but down slightly sequentially. And that's really all. I wrote it up at New Cannabis Ventures. If you want more information, you can read it there. The other piece of news that was really big was about New York. And New York has blown the move to adult use. And I remember when they announced it, I thought it was interesting the way they were treating the medical cannabis providers. There's 10 of them, and most of them are publicly traded or owned by publicly traded companies. And what happened this week was New York decided to go back kind of to the original plan. Originally, these existing operators in the state were rightly given the right to have not one, which is the maximum number of stores for anybody else, but 4 adult use stores to match what they have now for medical. And they changed their mind. And without getting into the politics, I'm sure many of you like what they're doing, many of you don't. I'll just say, wow, did the MSOs get screwed. But the state's having a huge problem. That's a whole nother story. But this week, they said that these organizations can get dispensaries in New York. And the other piece of news, I'd say, we all know 3 weeks ago, a little bit less than 3 weeks ago, but 3 weeks ago, 280E wiped out became a possibility or a probability. This week, safe banking came back to life. They're going to vote on it. I continue to think not a big deal for the public companies. It's a big deal for a lot of other reasons, but not for investors. It's a big deal for the customers, for safety, and it's a big deal for smaller operators that don't currently have access to banking. And a lot of these are minorities, so it's a social issue as well. I am all for safe banking. What I am not for is concluding that this is a great thing for the MSOs. Okay, so I did write a piece on Seeking Alpha this week. Not the first time I've written on it, but it was on Ascend Wellness. And I wrote, the title was, Ascend Wellness is ascending, but still very cheap. And it is. I think it had a decent week, but it's still very cheap, in my opinion. And you can read that at Seeking Alpha. In terms of news this week, I covered 26 names on my focus list, and there was news for 6 of them. First of all, Canopy Growth, a very popular stock that I say is not really investable. It could go up. It could be bought by Constellation. I don't think at a very high price, but higher than the current price. Or it could be a zero. I talk about that with my subscribers at 420 Investor a lot. This week, they demonstrated how stupid they are. They acquired BioSteel in the past. We already knew BioSteel was having big problems with their accounting. And this week, Canopy Growth put them into bankruptcy. So that's not that that was stupid, but it just shows you how stupid Canopy Growth was to buy them. It is bankrupt. And they put out an 8K that said that they're going to take 100 to 130 million Canadian charge against their assets. They didn't detail exactly what the charge is, but they already have a huge balance sheet problem. Their debt is massive, and they do have equity, but now it's lower. And I don't know, I look at tangible equity, which is a great tool for looking at in negative situations. So I don't think that Canopy Growth is going to declare bankruptcy anytime soon necessarily, but their balance sheet is horrible. Their operations are terrible. Okay, Cresco opened its 33rd Florida dispensary. Woo! Planet 13 was out with some news. First of all, you should be aware their symbol is different now, PLNH. The first piece of news that they put out was about, I didn't like it. I titled this Yellow Flag for my subscribers because I share the news real time with them. And the news was about a royalty-based deal with a really crappy Canadian penny stock. And I don't like that. I've told my subscribers about some problems with GrowGen. I'm not going to get into that today. But this was a negative. Now, the good news is they're not paying them anything except a royalty. The bad news is if they were smart, and I think they are smart, but if they were smart about this, they would have said, this company stinks. We're not doing a press release. And actually, it was the other company that put the press release out. But they had their permission, and it did say Planet 13 in the summary. The other piece of news was they have moved, well, actually, there's another one. They have a new line of vape cartridges in Nevada, their biggest market. And finally, they have moved from Canada to Nevada legally. And this is why they're changing their symbol. PLNH, no F. And if you think that's a good thing, look at Ascend. They got a 4-letter symbol. No, not a good thing. SHF Holdings, if you're looking for insight on which stocks to buy and why, you've come to the right person. I owned it, and then I sold it up, and then it fell, and I bought it back, and I sold it up a lot. I left some money on the table because it went up even more. SHF Holdings is an interesting company. They've been around for a while. A lot of people thought safe banking was going to jeopardize them. I don't agree. I do have some issues that I've shared with my subscribers. I wrote about the stock when it was at $4 in November, and I brought up a very negative point. I didn't do a full projection the way that I should have, but I said it's going to go down. It was at $4. Did it go down? Yeah, it dropped 90%. I never would have guessed that. Made a new all-time low. Well, I say I never would have guessed it. I didn't go through the process. They had a big problem. I did a good job on explaining exactly what the problem was, because it's no longer a problem. So they issued a whopping $3 million loan to a unnamed THC beverage company in Washington. And I've shared a lot of challenges, in my view, for this stock to catch on. It's still under $1, by the way, and facing delisting risk, potentially. Not that I think that's a big risk, but there are a lot of traders out there that do. And I can tell you, Springbig decided we're getting off the NASDAQ, and wow, did their stock go down. So there is a risk. It's kind of different than I thought. I just thought, reverse split, it'll go away. No, they can make a decision to just go OTC. What a dumb decision that would be. All right, Trulieve opened a new dispensary in Florida. And finally, Urban Grow, which is another example of a small company that I follow closely and that I sold it on Thursday up at a recent high, and then it plunged Thursday, and I bought it back. I like that company, but it's not 100% cannabis, and it's not very liquid. Recently, it's become more liquid. So that was the news on the stocks on my focus list. In terms of market performance, 3 weeks ago was fantastic. That's when the news about rescheduling potentially hit. And then last week was fantastic. The global cannabis stock index was up 11.2%. This week it was up 11.4%. We are up 47.5% in Q3. And we're up year to date. I'm trying to find that number. It's 13.9%. That's 2 points behind the S&P 500. We were a lot worse. We were like 40 points behind. So we've wiped out that big deficit. I run some model portfolios. I really enjoy it. And I sent a note to my subscribers yesterday telling them that I'm really not happy with the performance. I'm not going to explain exactly what the challenges have been, but right now, the market going up is a challenge. I have a lot of cash. I have a maximum of 20% cash in both my model portfolios. One of them is at 20 and the other one's at 15. And when the market goes up, it's hard to make money, right? If you're not fully invested. I can live with that. And over the last decade, I have consistently beaten the index. And that's all I try to do. I know a lot of people get upset. If you're down 10%, but the market's down 15%, I lost. That is true. And I do try to predict the market, but who can predict it? It's hard. I think giving people a better portfolio than the index over time is the smartest thing I can do. Instead of buy now, sell now. No. I've not had much cash historically. When Jeff Sessions was ranting and raving, I went immediately when that news hit to a maximum amount of cash. And that's probably the last time I had a lot of cash, honestly. I don't try to time the market. This week on the calendar, there's no companies reporting, but Canada will be sharing its July cannabis sales on Friday morning. There's a summary. There's a link to an article that was the basis of this video. And I'm rooting for cannabis stocks to go up. I think that the market right now is a lot of people are making a huge mistake just buying the MSOs. I was overweight MSOs before this news hit, and I'm very underweight now. And I continue to hold views that MSOS, the ETF, is not a smart way to play, that Curaleaf is very overvalued. And I know I wrote before this news came out about rescheduling that it could break 2. And I'm not going to tell anybody right now that it could break 2, although it could, but it's not worth focusing on. The smarter approach right now is to think about if it does or does not go through, what happens. If it does go through, Curaleaf isn't going to drop to 2. It's a really good thing, as I've been saying for more than this year. 280E is terrible, and going away would be great. But if it doesn't go through, wow, is it going to be nasty for Curaleaf and others. I'm still negative on Tilray too, but I'm not going to go over that for a different reason. But I am very positive on a lot of names. And I love this volatility. It allows me to take advantage of dips that are too big or rips that are too high. And I will say, to conclude, that I like the way things are changing. We have a very potentially profitable situation. But I am not going to conclude that it's a done deal. I've been writing about it. But what I would have shared with my subscribers, and what I'm sharing, what I've also shared with the new Cannabis Ventures audience, is that ancillaries may be a smarter way to play than MSOs. Do they benefit as much directly? No. No. The tax rate going down benefits the MSOs greatly if it happens, no doubt. But stronger cannabis companies will be good for the ancillary companies. So I'm very overweighted ancillaries. I even bought a REIT this week, and I'm not a big REIT fan in general. So the other part of my business, and so I was going to tell you as well, 420 Investor has seen a few subscribers, but I'm not seeing like a surge, the kind of thing that scares me that it's happened in the past, like in 2014. But I'll also tell you, New Cannabis Ventures ran out of customers. Our last customer, Green Lane, left at the end of August. Interesting, right? And by the way, I love that stock, but that's a different story. And so far, we've had no new clients. We're not even close on any. I do have a call this week with a former client. And so I don't see the world is changing yet. But if 280E goes away, I think the world is going to be better for cannabis investors. Take care. Have a good week. Happy New Year.